Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. I'm Shahin Hoda with X Growth, and today I'm talking to Benny Ausmus, founder at BigChange.group, about how marketing leaders can get inspiration from their internal culture and project that into their marketing strategy, presenting a more genuine and authentic corporate image. On that note, let's dive in. Benny, thanks for joining us.
Shahin, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. And I tell you what, I was looking at your book earlier a couple of days ago, and before kind of putting these questions together, and there's plenty of insight in there. First of all, I love to get a 30-second kind of dive into what kind of got you to write the Transformational Leadership Compass. How did that come about?
So look, I'm in the business of organizational change and development, predominantly in leadership development and working with leaders to shape growing companies. And gosh, 2 years ago, 5 clients in a week said, "We love the program, you should write a book about it." And I sort of took cue from that and went down the path of consolidating all of our methods and models into something that was accessible, readable, and practical. And 2 years later, published this book, and it's been quite well received, which is a relief. But essentially, it's a guide and a system for transformational leadership, and it's not a step-by-step recipe because, as we know, complexity doesn't allow for that. What it is a dynamic coaching system that leaders can work with to reshape their organizations, to exceed their visions, and to kick some real goals.
Got it. Now, I obviously, as I mentioned, had a look, and there are, just like you said, it's not a recipe. It's not a step-by-step process. And there were certain pieces that I definitely wanted to dig deeper in our conversation today, right? And as I said at the beginning of the podcast, really around that component of, hey, how do I take the culture of the business, and then how do I incorporate that into marketing, right? So on that note, what I want to explore first is, how do you go about defining culture? Like what do you do when you talk about culture, and what do you mean when you talk about culture?
This is a big one. Culture is a complex system, right? And the definition I like the most is from a guy named Edgar Schein. He's a PhD. He's one of the very few people I would consider to be actual experts on organizational culture. And Edgar defines it very, very well. And I'll read this so I get it to the letter. Is the accumulated learning of the group that is a pattern or system of beliefs, values, and behavioral norms comes to be taken for granted as basic assumptions and eventually drops out of awareness, right? So that's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful.
To boil it down a little more, you can really think of culture about the things that are so ingrained in our thinking, our communication, and our behavior that we forget we're doing them, we take them for granted, that they become the way we do things. They become the way we speak. They become us and we collectively, to the point where it's unconscious.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We went deep fast, didn't we?
We went deep right at the beginning of the show, like no mercy. I love it. So obviously, one of the things that gets derived from culture is also, it kind of gets derived from it. Sometimes it creates it. It's the internal values, right? And you've mentioned that internal values should match external claims. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, but there's this idea that I argue in the book that authentic brand is an inside job. So what I mean by that is, when we talk about brand as an expression of culture into the marketplace, and it's based on this premise that eventually the customer is either going to experience the service of one of your staff or experience a product you've designed and developed. And where does that all come from? Well, it's the work of the people. So the people's defaulting, they're taken for granted beliefs and assumptions and the way they do things ripple out into the market. And that's what the market's actually experiencing through brand. So the idea here is that true brand is an outwards amplification and expression of the company's culture. This deep, taken for granted sense of who we are and what we value and what value we create for the world. When marketers and creative expressionists are able to capture this and share it beyond the walls and beyond the work internally, it becomes something that the world can experience, and our culture actually expands through our customer, through our market. And the cliched but great example of this is Apple. People are part of the cult of Apple. There's that story of Steve Jobs, walking down the street in San Francisco and seeing people wearing white earphones and just thinking it's happening. We're building people into this whole culture about the creative, the rebel, the misfit, and we're creating archetypical artifacts and characters that match the people we have internally to the people we're looking for externally. It is tribal. It is about creating almost anthropological structures that resonate with external value systems as well as internal value systems in the form of an individual or team psychology, but also their work and their output and what they're creating as far as creativity, art, and meaning in the world.
Whose job do you think it is to kind of capture those values within the company and then project it in brand? Because obviously the brand component falls under the marketing department, right? I mean, if you wanted to very clearly cut things up, that would be under, the CMO, whoever it is, marketing director, VP. But then, do you see that being an initiative that a marketing leader takes on to kind of capture that? Is that something that comes higher up? What is your experience with that?
Well, I think it's useful to make a differentiation between brand and marketing, probably at this point. Brand being an essence and expression, or brand, at least in TLC terms, as being this essence akin to culture, a truer sense of what an entity is, what it stands for, what it's all about, expressed through various messages and channels into the greater world to create movement, create influence, and help people make decisions to whether they're going to join or not. Marketing is a level of tactics, some more sophisticated than others, at messaging and creating a customer. It's about, when done very well and aligned to brand, it's about distilling these into the right message for the right person at the right time, solving the right problem for the right outcome. A series of strategic initiatives, hopefully well-placed bets and investments into what's going to get attention and help somebody become a customer. I think brand runs a lot deeper, is a lot more long-term as well. And marketing, again, it's more focused around a process of transaction rather than transformation. And both are necessary and both work in a dynamic dance to be able to create. And I do think it's brand, marketing, and culture at its best work as an iterative process and dance to shape the value a company provides to the world and the way it brings that value to the world through various signals, channels, and offers and opportunities.
It sounds like you're saying really brand is like the CEO's job.
I think if it's to be done well, brand must be an integrated message throughout the growing company. I mean, let's go back to that original definition of brand as an outward expression of culture, right? If we say culture is what we're all about at our deepest essence, conscious or unconscious, it's there. Being able to express that in a meaningful way, I really truly think it's certainly under the CEO's level of responsibility and work to direct that at the very least.
Another thing that you talk about is North Star in your book. Where does that come into play?
Yeah, well, it's not a new concept, of course, and in fact, the whole TLC dynamic system integrates a whole range of different models of best practice into one thing that's easy to learn, easy to teach, and easy to share, so we can go on this journey together. That's my intention, right? So North Star it's a set of directions. It's guidance, a guidance system. So my model is a compass. The North Star is the vision. right? Where are we going? What does the compelling future look like? Paint me a picture. And visions are emergent. They get clearer the more closer we move towards them. It's an ongoing thing. So the North Star has vision, has the mission, worthy cause. What do we stand for? What do we fight for? What actually are we on this journey for? And what is it all about? And the articulation of that. Values. We have core values. Who are we most of the time? What do we prioritize in terms of the choices we make? Again, this is directional stuff. When done very well and clearly, it guides all decisions that happen on the journey towards it. In North Star, we also have standards, which are hard and fast, unmuckwithable rules. And I'm censoring myself here for the kids. Hard and fast rules you can't break in place that guide the direction that keep it all going. Big goals, big strategic initiatives, all belong in North Star. Aspirational values, who we'd like to become, not who we are now, but who we'd like to become, and guiding principles. So all of these things that can be created as cultural and brand assets sit in this category of North Star for the purpose of guiding our direction towards the future through leadership and expressing our direction to bring others along for the journey. And others can include everybody working for us and the market we'd like to lead and influence and inspire as well. So the power of the North Star is an articulation of direction. It's actually how we manage and lead direction. And it can range from a piss poor MBA activity that's done at some offsite and it sits up on a wall and it's done because the MBA manual tells you need a vision statement and it's in an induction manual and people go, oh, isn't that interesting? Or it's on some poster on a wall with an eagle flying over it that nobody, when I walk around and say, what are the values and what do they mean? And people, it can range from that to a living, breathing system of behavior, belief, and almost a cult-like phenomenon of who we are as a people, where we're going together and why it matters, and everything in between, of course. So the idea that I fight for at the book is to develop a very well-articulated and facilitated North Star asset, which means involving people in the process to create an asset that can appreciate and value through marketing channels, through discussing it, through talking about it, through amplifying it in the world to bring people on the journey. Because transformational leadership is all about going far by bringing people with you. And without this kind of language, without this kind of art, it's very difficult.
Got it. Earlier you talked about Apple. You gave Apple and Steve Jobs as an example. Are there any other companies that come to mind as an example of an organization that has really taken that brand, that North Star, those values of the organization, and incorporated in their marketing strategy to kind of boost the growth of the company? Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, there's lots. Well, I really often reference one that I think a lot of listeners would be familiar with is Zappos. Zappos and the CEO Tony Hsieh's work on delivering happiness. He was really, really instrumental in articulating brand values, hiring and firing on them, or cultural values and brand values. I mean, they even do culture tours of Zappos and have a culture school for other businesses that want to be like Zappos. That's a very meta, extreme example of it. But they really went down the path of culture is everything. That's how we're gonna run our business. We're gonna decentralize as much decision making as possible by creating everything around a set of principles that we make darn sure everybody understands, gets, and resonates with, and then sharing that with the world. Like you could call a Zappos representative and say, hey, can you order me a pizza? And they will, because they're all about service. They know they're about service. They'll turn it into a joke, and one of their other values is be fun and a bit quirky. So they'll turn that into a meme and share it across the office. Their engagement goes up, the environment improves. They really have figured out how to engineer an environment that people want to show up with, people want to be there for the same reason, people want to serve under the same promise, really. It's an environment where a promise can be consistently fulfilled. You know, that's kind of the magic code. when we're talking about brand marketing and culture, right? So this happens at all levels. We can talk about, organizations I'm not quite fond of either, like, not a big McDonald's fan for a myriad of reasons. However, there is the systems there, there's very good training culture, and there is consistency in a promise that cascades across every landmass in the world as a consistent promise to deliver on that, bolstered by systems and pushed out into the market through a series of well-kept promises. They're not exactly great promises, and they're not exactly completely disclosing, probably going to get sued from this, aren't I? They're not disclosing the downside of the promises they're making, or the trade-offs to get there. But they have done extraordinarily well in creating environments where people can come together, behave in a certain way that delivers an outward promise consistently. So, that's an example. Then there's all my client case studies, which you can look up if you like.
Go to the website and check that out. Yeah, no, I love it.
I gotta do the plug, right?
No, I love it. Okay, now I want to drill towards the end. I want to drill a little bit deeper into the marketing side of some of the maybe approaches that you've seen work really well in organizations, even the clients that you've worked with, in order to kind of drive those marketing artifacts, marketing assets from North Star and company values. What are some of the advice and recommendations you have when you work with people on that front?
Yeah. Okay. Keeping in mind that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice, I'll try and keep this general and useful as a principled discussion, with the caveat that this doesn't apply to everyone all the time and shouldn't be taken and is for entertainment purposes only. Let's roll with that. First up, I would say if we're talking in terms of internal brand, like culture and value system, be blatantly honest. So, for example, I had a client recently that realized they'd called me in because they'd become a real sales hungry company, and they were really neglecting their customers, and they weren't delivering on their promises. And they were like, let's call Benny to talk to our salespeople, to talk to our service people, to restructure our values so our promise to the world of delivering what we say we'll do comes true, and we can stay in business before the invisible hand of the market slaps the snot out of us. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll come in and play and we'll see what comes of it. So I come in, and what we're talking about is they're putting we've got our new core values. Customer care is one of our values. I said, no, it's not. No, it's not a core value. It's an aspiration that you have. Take it off the bloody wall. And they took it down, and everyone's going, oh, what's going on? It's like, you can't just wake up one day and tell your people that we're different. You can't. You have to have the conversation and say, you know what? We actually have stuffed this up, and we're trying to be better. And here's what we're working towards, and here's what you can expect from us. And we don't expect you to trust it until it's in place and it's moving. So they placed that as an aspirational value. They wrote on the walls of the building. They brought into their difficult customer conversations, we are working to be the best service provider we can. We're scoring it. Here's what we're doing about it. And every day we're trying to get a bit better at it. You know what? We know we're not there, but this is the number one thing we've got to work on, and we get it. And they were completely truthful, authentic, and honest about their own shortcomings. Guess what happened? Everybody got on board. Everybody said, yeah, this isn't some corporate bullshit slogan of, something that's on a motivational poster that I'm supposed to flick a switch and change my opinion about the entire history of behavior in the company. We just don't work like that. It was a very real, very honest, very truthful conversation about what change needs to happen that involved the people towards a commitment that they could stand beside, feel proud of, and eventually, because this is what happened, 3 months later, celebrate when they had the best NPS, net promoter score in their industry, because they were honest about it, because they were clear about their shortcomings, because they celebrated that they had stuffed it up but were prepared to do the work to make good with the people that mattered most. And I think that level of candid truth, vulnerability, and honesty is worth more than 1,000 clever taglines any day of the week.
Got it. Yeah, so you got to really incorporate it within the company, rather than just putting something on the wall.
Well, a couple things happen. If you put it on the wall and it's not incorporated, everybody that works there goes bullshit, and the currency goes down. The integrity of people goes down, and your culture weakens. And the next thing that happens is when somebody interacts with somebody at your company, which is either going to happen directly through a phone call, an email, or indirectly through something they've made, they don't fulfill on what the promise is that the marketing team designed, because that mismatch between culture and brand and marketing hasn't been calibrated in the right way. And that just turns into a series of disappointing encounters until somebody does it better and earns the business, earns the right to serve. Because really, at the end of the day, all marketing and all business is about earning the right to serve someone, in my eyes.
Got it. No, I really appreciate it. And I think there's a lot of interesting point that you shared over there. Before we kind of wrap up, I have a couple of rapid questions that I want to ask you as well. And I want to
All right.
dig in as well. So let's do it. So the first question that I want to ask you, Benny, is, what is one resource? It could be a book, it could be a blog or a podcast that has fundamentally changed the way you work or live.
I religiously read Seth Godin's work. It's the only email I subscribe to. So from marketing, Seth's daily blog, yeah, I love it. That said, there's 200 and something books I reference in my own book, and all of them have changed my life. And if you go to my website, bigchange.group, and you look up resources and books there's a list of 100 of the books that have had the biggest influence on my practice and our consulting. I can drop that in the show notes if you want to.
That would be great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 2 is, if you were going to give one advice to marketers, right, from all the transformational leadership work that you're doing, what would that one advice look like?
Effective marketing is a inside out job. If we can find a way to reverse engineer the ideal experience from the person providing the experience on the front line of the coalface, and explain that in a way that's very human, very clear, and zero smelling funny in any way, it's genuinely a reflection of that experience, I think we can connect with people a lot better.
Got it. Okay. Question number 3, and the last one, is, what are some of the influencers that you follow, either in your own space or in the marketing space, but what's some of the influencers that you keep an eye on?
I hang out with really interesting academics in the space of developmentalism and cognitive psychology. Peter Senge is a prominent systems thinker that's phenomenal. The great Jim Collins, who we all know and love, is a bit of I think he's one of the greatest thinkers in business literature of all time. Gosh, there are so many. I would say Dr. Theo Dawson, who's a mentor of mine. Her work is incredible in terms of developing people and working with developmental stages in children, but also in adults and executives. Robert Keegan's work on the self-transforming mind, that level of thinking and that level of psychology, I think is really where the gold is these days. I think the challenge is translating a lot of that deep academic wisdom to practical, actionable stuff that works in commercial terms, which is kind of my job as a thought translator.
Got it. No, I love it. Now, Benny, if people want to find out more, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, look, if you can check out bigchange.group, you can check out my own website, which is just dropped at bennyausmus.com, which is coaching practice. I am pretty approachable in having short, sharp meetings with people that are interested in development. So reach out, don't be a stranger. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if you Google Benny Ausmus, you'll find a whole bunch of stuff that I've put out there, and a whole bunch more is coming. So I hope that's useful for anybody listening that's interested. And I hope all of your pathways and careers are brilliant and shining and create wonderful contributions for all those around you.
I love it, Benny. This was a great conversation. I think it had a different bent to it, but I think there was a lot of insights that you brought to the table, and I think a lot of our listeners will enjoy it as well. So thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you. So I've really enjoyed this. I appreciate it.